Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life believing that it is stupid. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about why I think choosing to become a special education teacher, specifically in autism spectrum disorder, is a good career choice. By the way, that first quote I gave you was from Albert Einstein, famous physicist. Little known fact is he was also autistic. Okay, so I'm going to start with some of the more obvious perks of the job, which were listed before. Job availability and security, okay? So job availability for a teacher typically is not as easy as to find, as has already been pointed out. However, if you're going to be going into special education, your job opportunities are a lot more vast. Usually that's a field that someone who has a degree in education tries to avoid. It's a very stressful job at times, but I think it's rewarding in other ways. Okay, so the obvious perk would be the job availability and security. According to the Center of Disease Control, of the 1.7 billion people in America, 1% of those people have autism, which might not seem like much, but that's 1.7 million, and to put that in perspective is roughly the population of the entire state of Idaho. So even though that's sad that the numbers are so high, that does make job possibilities greater for someone going into that field. The obvious would be another one, the time off. Like was mentioned before, every summer off, every weekend, every holiday with your family. That's something I think is overlooked a lot when choosing a career, but it's a big one for me. And then there's also NEA member benefits, which will give you discounts on even like home and auto insurance. You can go to a craft store and they'll have like teacher discounts on those kind of things. You get matched retirement. But before teachers can retire or think about retiring, they first have to dedicate their lives to the students, which brings me to my next point. When working in the field of special education today, teachers educating autistic students are implementing groundbreaking methods of education, usually unheard of in years past. So what is the job of a special education teacher? It could be defined as someone who adapts content, teaching methodology, and the delivery instruction to meet the appropriate needs of each student. So to help you better understand this, I should first tell you, since my focus would be working with children with autism, what autism is. Autism is a mental condition present from early childhood, characterized by difficulty in communicating and forming relationships with other people, and using language and abstract concepts. Many people with autism also suffer from a lot of different sensory issues. So that's another big part of it. Some of the ways that special education teachers are adapting their curriculum is you can't, before you can teach a child anything, you need to be able to communicate with them. And communication is not always something that comes easy for specifically people with severe cases of autism. Here are some examples of modifications that might be made to help with communication for children with autism. They think in pictures a lot of times. So like my son son, for example, he carries around, which this red thing here is a book that he carries around all day, and it'll have his schedule on it. It'll say what he's going to do next, break down all the way to you have to have strips in the bathroom to say, okay, first we wash our hands, then we dry them off, so everything is broke down into a very specific process. Before you can even start to teach any academics, you have to be able to communicate with the student. And that's something that I find very interesting. It's almost like, learning a language in many aspects. And it was mentioned before with another person that had chose special education as, or not special, I'm sorry, being a teacher, the amount of work that goes into it. I interviewed Lisa Becker, and she is my mentor. I worked with her at the Waterville Elysian Morristown School, side by side with her as a paraprofessional. She is the special education teacher working with students with autism there. My son is one of her students. But she said that whatever the caseload is of a regular teacher, it is at least twice as much for a special education teacher, which might deter a lot of people from the career, but I would take it as a challenge because I'm stubborn. And also another thing that you need to be able to teach children with autism is social skills and emotions and just general life skills. So things that they might be teaching that you wouldn't necessarily think would be taught in the school is idioms. There's a frog in your throat. People with autism take things very literally, and they'll be looking for a frog in their throat. They also teach basic life skills like balancing a checkbook when they get to high school, or just cooking skills. And feelings and emotions are very hard for children with autism as well. So they'll have like daily check-ins. How am I feeling today? And then they would look at the things and be able to identify what they're feeling, why they're feeling that way, appropriate ways to act, what's acceptable in society, what's not. So that is something I find very interesting about working with children with autism as a special education teacher. By teaching such important life skills that will undoubtedly help the student throughout the course of their lives, the knowledge of these students' obvious progress can also help enrich the life of the teacher. Which brings me to my next point, that being a special education teacher can be very rewarding. Lisa Becker, the special education teacher I interviewed, said that working in this field has built her skills in empathy, patience, and creativity beyond anything she could have ever imagined. Another thing that would make this job rewarding is, you often hear the fact when teachers say the light bulb went off in the kid's head, and how well, or how much they enjoy seeing that they can make that connection. Well, imagine how much more rewarding that is to have a light bulb go off in a child's head that somebody thought was burnt out. So that's a big one. And then also, Lisa said another big reward is the gratitude you receive from parents. And they know that you're working your butt off for their children, and they appreciate you, and they make it known. And that's important when you're giving your whole life to others, I think, to be acknowledged. Okay. So in conclusion, these were just a few of the reasons that I feel that being a special education teacher is a good career choice. The obvious perks, teaching methods, and it's a very rewarding job. And who knows, I might just help to mold the mind of the next Albert Einstein. Thank you. Any questions?
So when looking at, is it specific grades that you would be teaching, or is it you would be working with someone for multiple years?
Like I said, Lisa Becker's my mentor, and she works with K through 12. So her classroom is very chaotic. But yeah, I would like to have the opportunity to work in any of the fields, or any of the levels of education, yeah. Yep.
Do you want to be in the same school your son's in, or?
Yes, which is why I'm wearing this shirt. You think I'm not dressed up, but this is the school I'm gonna work at, so it was themed.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.